It's been about 2 minutes, so I think I'm gonna get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to February's community meeting for OpenFGA. Let me make sure. Okay, yes, that works. So what are we going to be doing today? We are going to have some introductions. We're going to talk about what just shipped, some demos, what's the current and the future work. We're going to give some community news, and finally, we will have some Q&A at the very end. If you see me looking, to this side, it's because I have the chat there, and so I don't want to miss if anyone says something in the chat. So, first of all, meet the OpenFGA team. This is the whole team. It's a very, very big team. I'm also there, as you can see. I fixed this slide because I'm new in this team, and that's gonna lead me to an introduction. So if it's your first time joining the community meeting and you want to introduce yourself, please feel free to do it. I'm going to start. My name is Carla. I am based in Valencia, Spain, and I work for Auth0. I'm interested in OpenFGA because I've been doing a lot of work on authentication and so on, and so I wanted to switch things up a little bit and talk more about authorization. And so last year I started digging into FGA and OpenFGA and bugging Andres with a lot of questions. And so I think that worked because now I'm here. And where am I in my OpenFGA adoption journey? I'm still learning. I'm working on an open source project that we can talk about eventually. But yeah, so still learning. If anyone else wants to go ahead and introduce themselves, if it's your first time here.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Mac. I'm located in Canada, and I'm interested in OpenFGA because I've done a little bit of research last year because we were redoing the whole authorization where I work at. And we landed on OpenFGA after a few proofs of concept. And now we're just rolling things out to production in a few weeks, if everything goes well. And my role in the teams here is mainly wrapping OpenFGA so that other teams can consume it, and then kind of advise them and kind of manage the authorization model, and then leveraging it also to expose some APIs that we expose to our front end to manage the user roles.
That's very nice. Thank you very much, Max. So you're mainly using it internally and then exposing it some part for the APIs, right?
Yeah, well, we're rolling out really the whole application is going to use OpenFGA to enforce to do the checks of permissions. Yeah.
Awesome.
Just to clarify, because I've seen Jace saying that they are doing something similar. So Jace, he works at Zapier, and what they did is they wrap OpenFGA in their own permission service. So different teams end up calling the permission service API that then calls OpenFGA. Is that the way you architected the solution too?
A little bit. We're wrapping it mainly as a sidecar in our auth service, and we do expose the proxy because we only want a subset of the API to be exposed to them. So all the store management, which we use for tenancy, we don't expose, but we allow them to just use the plain OpenFGA clients with our own proxy URL instead.
Okay.
And we did add a little bit of, well, that part I'm not super sure it's a good idea, and I'll be interested to get your feedback on that. But the right API, we didn't like the fact that if you try to write a tuple that already exists, or if you try to delete a tuple that doesn't exist, that returns an error. So we wrap also this endpoint to be a little bit more forgiving and still allows you to do a full transaction with writes and deletes at the same time. We just remove the tuples that are superfluous. when we're doing when we receive the responses. And since we're on the loopback on a sidecar, it's quite efficient to do it. Yep.
Nice. Nice. I think that's a great topic maybe for the Q&A later
Yep.
in this call. Anyone else want to introduce themselves? No pressure.
I see a lot of new faces, so yeah.
I would love to
Go ahead.
introduce myself. Hey everyone, I'm Edouard. I come from Austria. Well, not really Austria, but France, but that's where I live right now. I was quite curious, and I've been following FGA for a while, and I picked Oriceto, which you most probably know. Anyway, so my son also wants to take part of it. Philip. And seeing the reduced activity in Oriceto, I thought, okay, maybe it's time now to have a look at FGA, because I really got involved a lot in Oriceto. I built several applications for some customers around Oriceto, and I really love the whole way to declare the relationships. And that's really now what I try to push for all my customers who need to or think to refactor their authorization system. And now I'm really starting the journey to learn about FGA, how to use it. So I started to dig into the API. It's very familiar to what Oriceto is providing. So I feel like I'm not really in unknown territory. So I have hopes that the learning curve should not be too high compared to the first time when I did it with Oriceto. So if there are any resources to get started, would love to find them, but I can do that research on my own. I have no problem.
Yeah, so there are a lot. So we don't have a guide to migrating from Oriceto yet, but you should get a lot of. So we have pretty good docs in OpenFGA.dev. We have a channel in YouTube that there's a lot of videos about modeling and presentations that we've done over time on several conferences. So between the docs and the content in YouTube, you should find a way to start. And also we have a channel in the CNCF Slack. You can get the link if you go to openfga.dev/community. You can get the link to it. You can reach out to us there and ask questions, and we'll love to help.
Very good. Thanks for opening your arms.
Nice. Anyone else for introducing themselves?
I can go next.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Julian. I'm working at Criteo. It's an ad tech company. We initially built a business authorization system, which is fully proprietary, that we own. And we also have a resource access management solution. And we also acquired the company recently, which has their own payback solution. So in the end, we have 3 authorization systems, and we try to unify them. OpenFGA came as one of the candidates. Sadly, it doesn't necessarily support the data storage solutions that we currently use internally. So we open sourced MS SQL connector for it. It's on the Criteo open source GitHub repositories. And today I would like to hear about how, and hopefully we will have time to discuss about it, how we can deploy OpenFGA versions that introduce breaking changes, and how are we supposed to handle those kind of use cases.
Great.
Nice. Anyone else? If not, then let's continue. All right, what's next? Where's my mouse? Okay. So let's briefly talk about what just shipped. There's a lot going on. So the first thing we're going to talk about is OpenFGA, and version 1.8.4 is out there. There's a few fixes in addressing a security concern over there. I think the first one that says fix missing binding between flags and environment variables for the cache controller feature is external. So thank you, Zach, for that. Also, for the CLI, version 0.6.4 is out, and we added some support in there. And also thank you to Sujita-AV. Hopefully I pronounced that good. What about the SDKs though? There's even more going on with the SDKs. So first of all, the Go SDK is release version 0.6.5, and there is some features, some fixes, same for the Python SDK. And actually, I believe we might have a little demo about the Python SDK later. And with the JS SDK, we had also a bunch of features and some breaking changes. I highly encourage you to go check the changelog, especially for this one, because we do have some breaking changes, like use the minimum node version. Now it's v16.15.0. And we also renamed some methods. So do make sure that you're using the correct names in there and fix that. Alrighty. And now we're switching to demos. And I think we're going to start with Dominic, who is going to be talking about the OpenFGA Kong plugin. So I think I can stop sharing now and hand it over to Dominic.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dominic, and I just have like a short demo on what I just did recently. I haven't introduced myself in the first round before because I thought give it now a shot. I work in a platform engineering team at Six. Six is a Swiss-based company, or I work in Switzerland for Six, which is just runs the Swiss stock exchange and also the Spanish stock exchange. For those who are from Spain, you might be familiar with BME. That's also part of the whole Six group. And I work there mainly in parts of API, Kafka messaging, and other like service and platform offerings. And yeah, and I happen to have to do some plugins and extension to our like API offering in that team. And the reason why we just looking into OpenFGAs, since we have a lot of like automation teams and services, you can think of like yada, yada, yada as a service. Yeah, that there's also like some goals on service automation. And when it comes to service automation, you also want to make sure that only certain people in a certain organization can access certain resources or create certain resources, especially in a highly regulated industry like we work with banks and a lot of like money flying around. Oh no, I just stopped sharing. Sorry, didn't want to do that. Yeah, just wanted to move that aside. Yeah, the goal or the plugin just recently out of a fun hobby project and having nothing else aside family and job. I just created this integration for Kong. For those who are not familiar with Kong, Kong is an API gateway. You can think of it something like it's just a piece of software where like you have a central entry point into your organization, and then you route to different kind of APIs. And Kong gives you this unified platform that you have a lot of like built-in features and capabilities that you do not need to implement on the service level rather than on the gateway level. And sometimes authentication is built in, but sometimes you also want authorization, and that's why yeah, the Kong offset OpenFGA plugin comes in. From a high level perspective, it's not that rocket science, which means the client connects to an API gateway. Then within that API gateway, you have the OpenFGA plugin or Kong plugin that intercepts that requests and then extracts some data, sends that to OpenFGA, makes an authorization decision, allow or deny, and if the request is allowed, it sends that back to the Kong gateway. After the plugin, it either denies it or it just allows it. And after that one, it's just forwards the request to the backend, and the backend then returns. There's already a plugin built from Kong itself. It's the OPA plugin, which does more or less the same thing, but the OPA gives you more capabilities than just say yes or no, you are not allowed, or allowed. But yeah, it's I thought having OpenFGA, which is just tailored and optimized for just those authorization, is just a good fit. I have in the background a local setup of OpenFGA running. That's also part of this repository, which once you boot that up in the makefile, it just runs. It just runs currently version 1.8.2 of a Docker, and then it already has a built-in database with a store. I just used the example from OpenFGA, the so-called GitHub example, which has just a model that emulates like access to GitLab, GitHub, and then some tuples for access. That's more or less it to it. On the configuration side, if you're not familiar with that one, but you can configure services, and that's what's running in the background. That the plugin is configured here, which means that's just the host where it's connecting to, the store ID, which is just wait a second, sorry, that one, it's just the ID of that store, which you can select, and then it needs the information about the user, the relation, and the object. And the user, for all those like 3 tuples, you can also run Lua code, which runs in the API gateway. For example, this one just extracts the consumer that connects to that endpoint, and we will see that in the and consumer is just a built-in like model or metadata, but everything that you can extract from the HTTP request or even gRPC requests or other requests, WebSocket, you can just on the fly inject and send to OpenFGA. There's also the possibility to have contextual tuples, which it's not covered in this demo. And you see, I just set up 2 users, Anna and Beth, which when going back to the original tuples, you see, need to zoom in a little bit. Anna has a reader relationship and Beth has a writer relationship. And in this example, only people or persons are allowed that have a writer relationship. This is more or less just the model. And here we have an example. If I just, in that case, I'm authenticating as Anna. If I want to access, I'm forbidden. But if I access it with the authorization header of Beth, I can access the repository data. Now the good thing comes in. For example, if I just go in here and create a new for Anna, which has a relationship of writer, which wants to access, for example, the organization. If I just save that and just wait a second. Not sure what happened there. If I just give it, there you go. If I just check now the authorization and for Anna, and she's also now allowed to access it, which means the proxy just blocks it or even allows it, and it always does like a lookup to FGA on each and every request. It could be improved. For example, the authorization information or like the decision can be cached, but that's not implemented right now. And once I just remove it, then Anna should be blocked once again. That's more or less what the plugin is doing and the capability that it's providing. Yeah, and yeah, I had really fun working with it and implementing it, and it works quite well. Back to you.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Dominic. I don't know if there are any questions. I think Andres maybe wants to say something.
No, in general, so implementing OpenFGA in an API gateway is something that makes a lot of sense because you can easily add authorization for all your APIs by putting it there. And we've seen demos of using it for other ones like API 6, and there's a blog post on how to do it with Amazon API Gateway and one for Envoy. So there's a lot of existing plugins for different gateways. So if you are using a gateway and you don't have a plugin and you need one, let us know. If you build it, let us know, because we want to make it simpler for everyone using OpenFGA to add authorization checks, and then a gateway is a very good and easy way to do it. Right? So thanks a lot for the demo, Dominic, and for
The whole thing is
contribution to
open
the
source
community.
if you're interested. Yeah.
Awesome.
The whole thing is open source and MIT licensed. Yeah.
Maybe you could share the link either in the chat or in the OpenFGA channel in the CNCF Slack.
Yeah, I think I already have
Sure.
it in the list of projects, and
Awesome.
I usually look for those and add them. So
Awesome. Thank you very much. I
He
see the link
recognized
there.
the thing one day after I published it, which is like enormous.
yeah, that is my like a OCD, which is searching for repositories that have OpenFGA from time to time. So I usually find like 3 days, 2 hours after someone push something to GitHub, they get a message from me, LinkedIn. Hey, this is interesting. Yeah, so
It also happened to me as well. I got a random message from Andres saying, you should talk with this person about this. And I'm like, yes, I am.
yeah, I've seen one day I've seen like two Ruby SDKs from 2 different members of the Okta team, right? So say, okay, guys, are you talking with yourselves? Are you both working on a
We
Ruby
were.
SDK? They were talking. So,
Awesome.
anyway,
Well, if there are not
great.
any questions, or maybe we can leave it for the Q&A, I think we can continue with the next demo, which is from Evan, who is going to be talking about string list objects in the Python SDK.
Yeah, hello there. Let's see. Let me share my screen here. Cool. All right. I am Evan. Nice to meet you. I'm an engineer on the FGA team. Today, I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about streamed list objects, which is a new endpoint that we just introduced support for in the Python SDK. It's the first SDK to get it, and we're excited to get feedback on how it works there. So if you're not familiar, stream list objects is basically a variant of the existing list objects relationship query API. I'm sorry, my cat is really being needy today. Stop. But it has a few advantages. Probably, like you can infer from its name, it's a streaming endpoint. So the results are streamed to your application as they're discovered by the FGA server. Whereas with list objects, the server kind of collects them in bulk and then sends them all out at once. So, if you're wanting to work with the results, I guess you'd say on a per result level more efficiently, this lets you just get those results more quickly, work with them as they come in. And it's also more memory efficient because you can work with that result, discard it from your application's memory, and instead of having to work with a big bulk at once. Yeah, it also doesn't have some of the limitations list objects has, which, for example, it's list objects by default is limited to 1,000 results. There's a flag behind that, but there's also in this case, you're basically just limited by the execution timeout, which defaults to 3 seconds, which should be ample in the vast majority of cases I can imagine. But yeah, no 1,000 result limit on this, which is really nice. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's now available in the Python SDK. And I was just going to quickly actually build a little app with you here to show you how it works. So first thing, let's boot up our Docker image. Okay. And then in your Python project, you want to install the SDK, which you can install using pip, or in my case, I actually have a requirements.txt file that I installed it from, but yeah, whatever works for you. So here's our little dummy app. So let's test and make sure it's running okay. Yep. Hello, community. All right. Okay, so I'm going to kind of try to be mindful of time here. I know we're really tight, so let me try to build this as quick as I can. We'll need to create a store. All right, that looks good. We'll need to write a authorization model, which, yep, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I have a JSON file that has all the details there, so I don't have to recreate it from scratch here. Okay, and then we'll want to write some dummy tuples here. So let's import our client tuple. Yep, we need JSON package. Okay, so we got a function here that will create our store, that will write our models, our authentication model, and then a little helper method here to basically just seed FGA with a bunch of mock data for us to play with. So yeah. Right, so we need just a basic configuration. We'll just point that to our local Docker. Okay, so we'll instantiate the FGA client with our configuration, and we'll just use that as a context for simplicity's sake. So let's await our create store with our FGA client, and that will return the temporary store ID. Yep. And then just for maintenance sake, let's delete that store when we're done. Oops. Okay. See if I've broken anything yet. Create store unexpected keyword name. Oh, yes. Yeah, that needs to be a, sorry, needs to be a client store request object. There we go. So we're creating and deleting a temporary store. Okay. Now let's quickly write our model. And then we'll have the SDK set that new authorization model ID to the default for the stuff we'll be doing next. All right, one more test. Yep, so we'll run that a few times. Each time it's different. Yep, looks good. Okay. All right, so let's do a quick list of our tuple writer here. All right, so you can see in the FGA server here, we're basically, in this case, just creating 100 mock tuples. So we'll leave that at 100 for the moment, just to demonstrate kind of the differences between list objects and stream list objects. But I'm going to basically set up both endpoints here, and we can sort of compare and contrast. So both endpoints through the SDK use a client list objects request class. So let's see. Relation owner user equals Ann. All right. So let's hit the normal list objects endpoint and print f list objects for result in results.objects. List objects turned. Okay. Boo, 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 boo. See if that works. Okay, so this is the standard list objects endpoint. You see it returned our 100 mock objects there. Let's disable that dummy output. And now let's add the streamed list objects. So this is, as I mentioned, a streaming endpoint. So it has an asynchronous API. So you have to use a async context for this. This lets you basically loop through each result as it's streamed back from the server. So you can see it's, async for response in, that should be stream list objects. Yeah, so we're going to append the response to our little array here just so we can look at the total afterwards. But let's do another test output there. And then printf stream list object returned objects. Okay. Not printf, print. Let's see if that works. Yeah. Okay. So you can see at this point functionally they look the same, right? They both get 100 objects. And as far as you can kind of tell here, they might as well be working in the same, the same manner. But in this case, these are actually being returned asynchronously, whereas this is being returned as basically a list or array after all the results are in. So let us do something a little different here. Okay. Right, so let's get rid of that. Okay, so just get rid of the dummy data there, or the debug data. Okay, so now where it gets interesting is when you have a ton of results. So as I mentioned, list objects has a 1,000 result limit by default, whereas streamless objects, it's basically the sky's the limit as long as you're inside that execution timeout. So let's just throw a bunch of data at it. Let's just say, let's put 2,000 mock tuples in there. All right, you can see right there, list objects returned 1,000 objects and stream list objects returned 2,000 objects. And, you know, like I said, the sky's the limit. You could you know, have as many as you need in there for whatever the situation. Basically, streamless objects, if you have big data results, way more memory efficient for your application, depending on your needs, could be much more performant for working on, you know, a per result basis. Yeah, just a pretty exciting endpoint that I think opens up a lot of possibilities. So yeah, if you want to play with this, I don't have this exact demo up, but I have something similar up on the Python SDK repo under example streamed -list.objects. You can play with it there. But I think I'll also put up this one maybe alongside that somewhere, since it's, I think, a little more demonstrative of the differences between those endpoints. So yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Evan. Also, great live coding skills. That is a thing on its own.
I definitely didn't
wanna-
practice that for like an hour and a half. Trust me. Yeah.
No worries. So yeah, if you can share that in the chat, or maybe the Slack channel, that would be great. For the sake of time, I'm gonna move forward. So if you have questions, be sure to talk to Evan later on. Just talking a little bit about the roadmap, as you can see what's going on now and next. A lot of work on batch checks and stream list objects, as you could see from Evan's demonstration. Highly encourage you to go take a look at the roadmap. Again, for the sake of time, I'm going to move forward. And now we're going to go with some community news. So what has been going on? We were in NDC Security and in JFocus, and by we, I mean OpenFGA. Sam Belen did a talk called Can't Touch This, and then we also had a community member doing a talk on OpenFGA. I think this was NDC Security as well. Yes, NDC Security. So that happened, but also Deepu is going to be talking about how to secure a rack system, and he's going to be merging that with some OpenFGA as well in Box Days Amsterdam. I don't remember the exact date of this one. I think it's either March or April. I will double check on that and let you know. But yeah, this is another thing that is coming. Also, KubeCon Europe, we have a couple talks in there. April 4 and March 31st, so don't miss them. Let me check the time. Yes, I'm going to continue for the sake of time. And now let's keep the room to Andres to talk about OpenFGA incubation.
I'm going to be brief because I wanted to talk about migrations and the end of the presentation meeting. So yeah, just to let you know that OpenFGA today is a sandbox project in CNCF, and we are getting closer to being evaluated for incubation. That implies that we got asked to provide references from customers using OpenFGA in production. We need to send like 5 to 7 references. I got 10 because there's a lot of large companies using OpenFGA in production that were very willing to help us. So that's gonna hopefully happen soon. Soon is probably a few months, but the idea is that, yeah, I hope by the end of the year we are in incubation. That will help us a lot in getting more traction, more people interested in the project, more credibility for the project in general. And what we need from you is that if you're using OpenFGA in production, please add yourself to the adopters.md file, because the more adoption we can show, the better for us, and the better for the project, and the better for everyone. So if you are already in production, please consider doing that.
All
So,
right.
and then let's go quickly to the rest of the things and try to go to the migration scenario. And maybe Julian, you want to explain what you were, the use case that you have for migration?
Yeah, sure. We were just, so I guess many companies are introducing OpenFGA um, as an authorization layer. And since they don't necessarily control the data model or the API contract that's exposed by the solution, we assume that through time they will be introducing some breaking changes. So during the upgrade period, we do think that there might be we have to shut down the previous version or transit the traffic from the previous version to the new one. And we want to do it smoothly so that there is no impact on our clients.
Yep. So are you talking about changes in your authorization model, breaking changes there, or breaking changes in OpenFGA itself?
In OpenFGA itself.
Yeah, so we usually don't do that, right? So if in general, we know that customers need to run migrations without downtime, and we always prepare the service to do that. In most cases, that implies so we don't do breaking changes in APIs, and so the APIs are stable. And if there's one, there's usually a flag to enable it and things like that, but it hasn't happened up to now, right? If we end up introducing an API that is not compatible, we'll have two versions of the API or a way for you to keep using the old one. At some moment, we are going to deprecate versions, and that might imply some kind of more sophisticated migration, but we are not there yet, and it hasn't happened. So I cannot tell you how that's going to work. But you can think it of any major version of a system that you need to migrate. We are going to think of a way that you can do it without downtime, right? And it may be simpler or harder to implement, but that's our goal. And in most cases, up to now, the most complex migrations we had to do implied doing some changes in the database that alter table, add column, things like that. We provide migrations that you can go up and down in case there's an issue there, and that you can run those first in a station environment to verify they work well. And in some cases where we had to do migrations that implied more than one change in the database that had to do like a first one, then another, and then another, we end up shipping different versions of OpenFGA. We told you, okay, if you want to go from this to this one, you need to go, we recommend to first migrate to this one and then migrate to this one, right? So up to now, that's been the path we've been taking, and we haven't had a backwards incompatible version of OpenFGA. Ragged, sorry, you want to say something?
I know. I just wanted to add to what you said, Andres. So we do have potentially some more breaking changes in the database. Not breaking if you just migrate to a higher version. We're not doing them anytime soon, but we believe they will bring some potential improvements to some DB adapters. That said,
but so just to clarify, when you say a breaking change, you mean that they won't be able to upgrade the version?
So yeah, just to clarify, it means like if you have a version running, talking to the existing tables, we will be at some point removing them. But to do that, what we usually recommend is one, we give you many months to upgrade. So we'll be doing both things for quite a while, and we would say like, hey, please go to this new version now, because at some point in the future you wouldn't be able to migrate. Also, we wouldn't do it in a like patch release. So as a general recommendation, if you're not looking for at our change logs, a good idea to follow is don't don't bump up releases more than one minor release. So if you're 1.8.4, don't want to bump up to 1.10.2. Like go to 1.9 first and then go to 1.4, because most likely if even across so many months, any changes we do would be across minor version. It's not more. But as Andres said, like I mean, we came across this many times before, and we still have a few coming up. And generally, pay as close attention to the changelog as you can, especially like not just the latest, like the stuff from when you are migrating to the latest, and yeah, try to not bump like many versions in one go.
But in any case, for us, like we designed the system in a way that you can migrate to the version without downtime. Okay? And that's part of the story. And the other part is that, for example, I know there was an issue if you migrated for, I don't know, 1.5 to 1.8 directly, right? And there's something that wasn't working. That happened once, and we fixed it, right? And then they started working, right? But so yeah, we might not check all the combinations from every previous version to every new version of migration, right? And that's why Ragged suggests, yeah, try to stay up to date, right? But in general, if this thing should be in the changelog, we should tell you, okay, please migrate to this version if you want to migrate to the next one. I think that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I just wanted to know if you had any guidelines
Perfect.
for moving from version N to N+1. Seems like it's. Thank you.
And then the other one that might be also relevant for the rest of the team, the community here, is how you run your own migrations, right? So let's say you have a model version and you are now having a new version of the model with changes, how you accommodate those, right? And the way we usually describe those, you need to think them about as any database migration. There are certain database migrations that are easy to do. For example, if you add a new table to a database, if you add a new field that can be nullable to a database, those changes are not impactful. You can do them without any downtime. And that is equivalent to adding a type in FGA or a relationship in FGA. Those things which are the most common things you would do in models, add more things, don't have any impact in the existing data, and it's easy to run. If you need to do changes, like for example, renaming a relationship, deleting a relationship, renaming a type, those things are equivalent of renaming a database table in a relational database or renaming a field in a relational database. First, those are the things you usually don't do because you know they are painful, right? If you want to rename a table or rename a field. But if you do them, you usually have to kind of have both versions of the table or the field for some time because you're going to have applications using each of them, right? So in general, the migration is you add a new field with a relation with the same name, you write data to both. Once applications stopped using the old one, you just delete the old one, right? We have a page about migrations in OpenFGA that describes these use cases, and that is the idea in general. You think them as a way, in the same way you would think about a database migration when changing your schema. I don't know if anyone has experience of running complex migrations with OpenFGA, that they had to do things that were more complex than that, or with the hosted version of Op, because the same story with a hosted version of the product.
I also just add again to what Andres said, running migrations in FGA for things like relation name changes are much easier than type changes. Relation names, you can do it fairly easily. Types require data migration and are fairly much more intensive. So just keep them, like when you're naming, I mean, take care of the relation names, but even more, make sure the type names you're choosing are appropriate.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. We are 6 minutes over time. So if you have any other question or comment about anything that we discussed in this call, feel free to drop it in the CNCF Slack channel. You can find all the information on how to reach out to the community on openfga.dev/community, if I recall that correctly. And thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.